You're listening to the Vocabbett podcast, where I help students improve their vocabulary for the SAT, ACT, and life itself using my unique and research-backed story-based method. On this podcast, I'm sharing the best tips and tricks for a more enriched vocabulary and pain-free test day. Hello, and welcome to episode 61 of the Vocabbett podcast. I'm Erica Abbott, a former English and history teacher, the author of the young adult novel Ahead of Her Time, and the founder of the eponymously named vocabulary company Vocabbett. In the last episode, we talked about how the names of the months make no sense, and a lot of that is because the Romans, from whom we basically got the, modern day-to-day calendar, originally measured their months by the cycle of the moon. And that got me thinking about moon root words and all the crazy stories that derive from them. The Latin root for moon is luna, and there are a lot of great words like lunatic and lunacy that come from this root because back in the day, a lot of people thought that a full moon could make people go temporarily crazy. I read a really interesting article in Discover magazine about this, and I'll link to it in the show notes. But it talks about how in the 1st century CE, Pliny, who's a very respected Roman, postulated that a full moon makes people crazy because it causes excess moisture in the body. He pointed out that on the morning after a full moon, there's often all this extra dew in the grass. And even then, they knew that the human body was largely water. So he speculated that if there's extra moisture on the earth on these days, there's probably extra moisture in your body too. And he theorized that excess moisture can make some people crazy. If you want to take it a step further, the legend of the werewolf is also closely tied to the moon. So on full moons, we've supposedly got crazy people and werewolves running around. But I'm far more interested in writing than I am lunatics or the moon, so that's where I'm going to take this. Neil Gaiman, who wrote Coraline and Good Omens and about a million other things, had a brilliant tidbit in his writing masterclass about this. He talks about how a great way to get stories is to ask what if. So start with something that everyone, knows, and then ask what if. Everyone knows that if a werewolf bites you, you become a werewolf. But what if a werewolf bites a goldfish? Does the goldfish become all hairy and rabid and grow legs? What if a werewolf bites a chair, starts gnawing on the leg of the chair like sometimes animals do? Do you then get a chairwolf? And he just so effortlessly spins this story about a detective tracking down these murders, and the only evidence is these lines in the sand. And then on a cool night, the clouds part, revealing the light of the full moon, and the chair he's sitting in starts to sprout more and more fur. And it's just so brilliant. So today's lesson is twofold. The first is Luna words usually relate to the moon, like lunar, but they can also relate to crazy things like lunatic and lunacy, because back in the day, many people thought a full moon could make some people crazy. Part 2 of the lesson, if you're a writer, is that stories are everywhere, and a great way to find them is by asking what if. What if a werewolf bites a chair? Do you get a chairwolf? Only Neil Gaiman could pull off that story with a straight face, but I still think it's a brilliant example of how to find ideas. Ask what if. I hope everyone has a great weekend and a wonderful New Year's Eve. I Googled it, and we are very close to a full moon at the moment, but we won't have a full moon on New Year's Eve. We should be like a day out of it. So hopefully that's a good omen for a less crazy year ahead. In any case, thank you guys for joining me in 2020. I will see you in 2021.